Hey, this is Alex Howell with Community Fly Shop. Just wanted to talk about a recent trip. I went to Martha's Vineyard a couple weeks ago. One thing that we want to try to do here with Community Fly Shop is just share our experiences and tips for certain places. So let's get started. So Martha's Vineyard is off the coast of Massachusetts. If you've never been there, awesome place. We stayed in Edgartown. Which is right here. This is a central area for shopping and restaurants and bars and stuff like that. This is the Chappie Island. Everybody probably has heard of Chappie. There's also a place over here to the left of Menimsha called Lobsterville Beach. If you take this coastline up, this goes into Vineyard Haven, which is a port that you can take a ferry to. And then this goes around the corner to Oaks Bluff, which is another ferry. This area here is called Big Bridge. This is the famous Jaws Bridge. And that takes you back to Edgartown. Whenever I was doing research for this trip, we were going in October, the beginning week of October. So striped bass, bluefish, false albacore, albies, and also bonita. The place that we started was this place called Larry's Tackle. Great shop right there in Edgartown. It is right down the street. It's right there. But if you go to Larry's Tackle Shop website, you can go to fishing info, click where to fish. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, just an example. Brings up a quick little map. Let's click on Lobsterville. So it goes through just tips and times to fish, where to fish, things like that, what lures to use. Lots of great info. But hopefully we could try to summarize everything that's on there today. So I focused and fished a couple different places, but found the most success in a couple of different areas. So this entire beach down here is called South Beach. It runs from Lucy Vincent, which is a private beach during the summer, and then goes down to this Long Point Wildlife Refuge over to South Beach. There's two fishing areas over here. You can also fish this entire shoreline. It is pretty treacherous and it is a lot of surf casting. From what I can understand, it's a lot of early season. One thing before we get into this, nothing that we say should be taken with 100% accuracy. This was the third time fishing this area. So if there's other tips and other places to fish, feel free to comment on the video below. But this is South Beach. Supposedly there's really good striped bass fishing here. I didn't fish this much while I was on vacation and fishing, really just because it's pretty strong surf casting. There's a big drop off of this coast. This entire area is called Aquina. This goes into Gayhead Beach up here. It's pretty good fishing. It's a lot of like rocky areas. I try to focus more on the windblown jetties and get there in a second. And then most of this area from Menimsha up to Vineyard Haven is just windblown shoreline. There's some good striped bass fishing here. However, like some of these are private. Some of this part of this coastline is private. So you can't get it everything. But there's really 3 or 4 main areas that I would focus on if I or whenever I do go back. So this is Menimsha, and this entire bowl here is Lobsterville Beach. Lobsterville Beach goes all the way up here to Dogfish Bar. You can take this Lighthouse Road to Oxcart. You go down here, and on Oxcart there is a parking area where 3 or 4 cars can park. You can walk out the Dogfish Bar. That's a bar. It's pretty dangerous out there, definitely during an incoming tide, but great fishing, like unbelievable fishing for stripers. Lobsterville Beach is pretty famous, definitely for fly rod guys. One thing to notice, if the wind is coming north or from the north, this entire area is going to be filled with weeds. So it's probably better to use like a floating line versus sinking line. Albies and stripers, bluefish, bonita will run this entire bowl. However, like if the fish aren't here, then the fish just aren't going to be here. The best wind that we saw was a west wind. There's a jetty that pops out right here, and bait will be pushed up here. The 2 main baits that we were trying to match while we were up there were silverside minnows and a peanut bunker. While we were there at Menimsha, we caught some bluefish. Bluefish will hit about anything. I definitely like poppers at first light. But if the wind is blowing from the west, it's going to bump you out right here on this jetty. You just got to get there early. I'd fish the left side of the jetty. This pond is also full of small bass. If there's any moving water, so moving water just means high tide to low tide to high tide. Low tide, this pond will be full and fish will be coming out of this pond into the ocean. So you can fish this little cut right here. The incoming tide, water's coming in, coming out. One thing that's probably easier to see over here in Vineyard Haven, it's like how the water moves. So I fished this area quite a bit. This is a Vineyard Haven jetty. This is Eastfield Point Beach here. So let's say this is another pond. So let's say the water is coming out. Water's going to come out. It's going to rip across this jetty and form some slack water right here. Bait going to come out into this area, but it's going to come this way. So an outgoing tide, fish this entire area, follow the bait around. Incoming tide, bait's going to be pushed up against the shore. And then also this water's going to be coming around here. So there's going to be slacker water around here. Stripers, bluefish, false albacore are all going to be following the tide, following the bait. There is a sailboat instruction camp in this lagoon pond. You can park around there. Here's a sail camp. You can park around here. This point, if you can get onto it, is another bar somewhere around here where you can get on there. Great striper place. So yeah, it says Vineyard Haven, great place, definitely with moving water. And I'm going to get to the moving water, tides, light. This is Big Bridge, same thing as the other moving water places. This pond fills up, incoming, outgoing tide. You can swing big streamers through here, pick up striper, definitely in low light areas, so like at dusk or at dawn, and also throughout the night. False albacore and bonita definitely do run through here into this pond, and so they run out. Had some action. This jetty sticks out, so sometimes bait will be pushed all on here and get trapped at the end of this jetty. That, and also bait will be coming from this way, going into this pond, an incoming tide, and going out, an outgoing tide. Also some good action on this point during an incoming tide. Bait was just trapped right here. Tons of stripers in this area. Last good spot on the mainland, this Lighthouse Beach, super easy to get to from downtown Edgartown. So if you're staying down here, great spot to check out. On the outgoing tide, definitely try to fish this area here. If there's a wind coming from the northeast, so coming this way, or coming from the north, this whole shoreline is going to be blown out with weeds. So focus your area in this bowl. And then on the incoming tide, it's going to come here. There's going to be a lot of slack water. But really off this point in this bowl, out to this area is a great spot. This is a flat out here. Bluefish definitely feed on this flat during the October time. Caught some there. You could take this ferry. There's a ferry leaving from Edgartown to Chappie. This bowl is great. This gut area is great. Definitely if you can get a popper or something into there for striper bluefish. There's a huge rip off of this point, but you do need four-wheel drive to get to it. The other walking place would be this beach. This is Dyke Bridge. You can park here, fish this entire beach. Got some good stripers there. Off of Clouser, you can also make it down to this point. There's a rip that forms right here. It's a good spot. So now let's dive into equipment used and feeding behavior. So feeding behavior of bluefish, definitely early morning, late at night. Sometimes they feed during the day, but they're pretty explosive, definitely at low light conditions and moving water. Stripers, usually at this time of year, it's a bigger stripers, they're smarter. They feed at nighttime. So most people that were catching stripers were fishing at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. So definitely not for the faint of heart. And then albies and bonita are feeding throughout the day. However, from what I can understand and what I found out was they definitely feed better on any sort of moving water. So an hour after high tide, when the water starts pumping out, great time to fish. Couple hours before low tide, great time to fish. So definitely study your tide charts, figure out whenever the water is moving the most and the fastest, and focus on that area. So striper, they're going to be around structure. So they'll be off of, let's say, a point. There's a drop off. They're going to be off that drop off, and they're going to come up, eat, go back down, come up, eat, go back down, come up, eat, go back down. If they're off of a point like here at Big Bridge, you're going to sit around this point. Whenever the bait comes into that rip, they're going to feed right at that rip. Rip is just where there's current from inflowing water and then water that's almost slack. As soon as the bait hits that, usually a couple stripers go after the bait, and then go back to wherever they came from, and they come back and forth, back and forth. Bluefish just really chase around the bait, and so do the false albacore. If you have the option to fish from a boat, there's a ton of places, but you can focus on these areas, or you can go to, this is probably the best place, is Vineyard Sound. Tons of moving water in this area. But false albacore are funny because you'll have a big school of them, and they'll come through, they'll come from below. Let's say you're fishing Big Bridge. You have a school of bait fish. Let's say a school of bait fish is here, and the false albacore will come up from below, eat a couple, go back down below them. Come up from below, eat from them, go back down below. What that means is false albacore typically in a little bit deeper water than striper. Striper typically go in a couple feet of water or a foot of water at times. But false albacore typically stay in a little bit deeper water. So you have this giant school that will keep attacking bait fish. Also, there are usually some false albacore that stay below the surface that just run up and down the coast. So you can catch false albacore on blind casts, or you can catch false albacore by casting straight into a blitz. what I would do is focus on the areas. So let's see if I can turn this to satellite. Yeah. So let's say you're standing at the edge of this bridge, fish both sides of the bridge, cast, I would probably cast this way into the current. You can cast here, or you can cast here, fish this, and then let's say you see fish breaking right here, take a couple steps, cast straight into it. As you can see, we saw a ton of striper action off this point here. So, great area. Okay. So equipment used, let's see. I use a 10 weight rod, 10 weight reel. The line I used was Scientific Angler Titan. Titan Intermediate 4 here. Bought it from a place called Bear's Den Fly Shop. Bear's Den Fly Shop is awesome. Flies, Clousers, Clouser minnows. So just typical Clousers, big white flies for stripers, poppers for bluefish, and then for albies, just like a sand eel almost. Like a surf candy, just something that looks like this. Something like that. Because what you're going after this is the bait that they're going after. Silverside minnows and peanut bunker. There. Big stripers are going after just normal bunker. See how the peanut bunker are a little smaller. The normal bunker, big toad striper. So you can tie huge white flies for the big striper. You could tie huge eels patterns. So eels are pretty big, so they look like they can be a foot and a half long. See, and so all the big stripers are typically caught at night unless you're fishing that the sound out in the deeper water. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So if I were, or whenever I do go back, I'd focus if you don't have a boat too, that's another thing. I did not have a boat on my trip, but whenever I do go back, I will focus most time on albies, definitely at early October. Fish this lighthouse point, fish Big Bridge, Vineyard Haven, Nimsha, Lobsterville Beach area. This pond is pretty good as well. And also if you make it over to Chappie, great place to fish on this little bowl over here. For stripers, definitely early season schoolies. Chappie's a great place. You can walk this entire beach, which I did, caught a ton of fish. The Edgartown Lighthouse area, you can catch a ton of fish in here as well, definitely with moving water. But they're going to be chasing bait around here versus just cruising the shore. So it's going to be more concentrated. So if you hit them, great. If you don't, you're not going to catch anything. Over here, you'll catch a lot of great fish. You can fish the South Beach. This is all just surf casting. Good place to fish. And also over here, Case Head up to Menimsha. Great place for early season stripers. So that's where you can fish. Thanks. Bye. Oh, the last piece of thing that we wanted to do is just a little conservation effort. So there definitely aren't as many big stripers as there used to be. I think it's a multitude of different reasons, but from what I heard, people are taking a lot more fish. Also, just due to environmental factors, dredging, etc. There's only really two types of bait during this time of year, which are the peanut bunker and the silver sides, versus multiple different types of bait. And because of that, the fishing isn't as great, number one. Number two, the fish are pickier. There's a guy that I met that has been fishing in this area for over 40 years. He said this was one of the worst years he's seen since he started fishing. There's another guy that was a fly fisherman, fished this area for 20. Said the fishing is okay, however, the fish are a lot pickier. He said where before, say there was a fish cruising this coastline here, he would pick up a silver side even if he was eating a lot of peanut bunker. But now, he said the fish are keying in on one type of bait at one time. So they definitely won't pick up as many baits as typical. So let's just be conscious while we're out. Don't take fish unless you need to. That's about it. Thanks. Bye.